the secret midnight recording that changed John Lennon's sound forever. New York City, 1974. A blizzard howled through the canyons of Manhattan, burying the city in a shroud of white, silencing its usual roar. But in the heart of the Lower East Side, in a derelict studio rumored to be haunted, John Lennon was about to confront a ghost far more terrifying than any spectral musician. What if, in those freezing, clandestine hours, he recorded a forbidden album, a raw, primal scream of a sound that would never be officially released, but whose echo would change his music and his life forever? The year is 1974. New York City, a colossus of steel and ambition, was locked in the grip of a brutal winter. Snow fell for days, blanketing the streets, muffling the usual cacophony of traffic and sirens into an eerie, almost reverent silence. It was a city of extremes, and in the mid-1970s, it was also a city in flux, its glamour often overshadowed by a gritty, sometimes dangerous reality. John Lennon was living in the midst of his lost weekend, a turbulent, restless period of separation from Yoko Ono, marked by creative struggle, personal excess, and a profound sense of being unmoored. He was living in a penthouse apartment on the Upper East Side, a gilded cage that felt increasingly alien to him. The music he was making, while still brilliant in flashes, often felt forced, searching for a direction that eluded him. He was producing records for other artists, collaborating, experimenting, but the core of his own sound, the raw, visceral honesty that had defined his best work, felt distant, obscured by the haze of alcohol and the relentless demands of a life lived without an anchor. He walked the city often, especially at night, when the anonymity of the dark offered a temporary reprieve from the relentless scrutiny of fame. He sought out the edges, the forgotten corners, the places where the city's true pulse beat beneath the polished surface. He was drawn to the derelict, the abandoned, the places that held the ghosts of other lives, other dreams. It was on one such walk, a freezing, snow-swept midnight in early February, that he stumbled upon it. A crumbling brownstone on a forgotten street in the Lower East Side, its windows boarded up, its facade scarred by decades of neglect. A faded sign, barely legible beneath layers of grime and graffiti, read, "The Echo Chamber, Recording Studio." The building had been abandoned for years, a relic of a bygone era of independent music production. Rumors clung to it like the grime on its bricks, stories of musicians who had lost their minds within its walls, of strange sounds captured on tape that defied explanation, of a particular, unsettling resonance that permeated the very air inside. It was a place that most people avoided, a place where the city's forgotten dreams went to die. But for John Lennon, in that freezing, snow-swept midnight, it called to him. Not with the promise of fame or fortune, but with the raw, primal whisper of something that needed to be found, something that needed to be heard, something that needed to be screamed into the silence of a city that had, for too long, heard only the echoes of his past. He did not know, pushing open the rusted, protesting door and stepping into the freezing, echoing darkness of the echo chamber, that he was about to record an album that would never be officially released, but whose influence, once heard by a select few, would subtly, irrevocably alter the course of his future music, leaving behind a disturbing truth about the price of creative rebirth and the terrifying power of confronting one's own artistic demons in the dead of night. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like. That helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. John Lennon in 1974 was a man adrift. The Lost Weekend was not just a period of separation from Yoko. It was a profound creative and personal crisis. He was 34 years old, and the wellspring of his inspiration, which had once seemed inexhaustible, felt stagnant. He was drinking heavily, surrounded by hangers-on and sycophants, and the constant noise of his life made it almost impossible to hear the quiet, insistent voice of his own muse. He had always been a seeker, a man driven by an insatiable curiosity and a relentless need to push boundaries. But in 1974, the boundaries felt like they were closing in. The music he was making, while technically proficient, lacked the raw, visceral honesty that had defined his best work. He was searching for something, anything, to break through the creative block, to reignite the fire that felt like it was slowly dying within him. The echo chamber, as he discovered, was a place frozen in time. Its recording equipment, though ancient by 1974 standards, was still functional, a relic of the late 1950s and early 60s, when the studio had been a hub for independent jazz and folk artists. The main recording room was a large, cavernous space, its walls covered in faded acoustic tiles, its floor littered with the detritus of forgotten sessions, broken guitar strings, crumpled sheet music, empty cigarette packs. A single, dusty upright piano stood in the center of the room, its keys yellowed with age. The control room, separated by a thick pane of glass, housed a vintage 8-track console, its knobs and faders caked with dust. A single reel-to-reel tape machine, a Studer A80, sat silently in the corner, its large, empty reels waiting. The air was thick with the smell of mildew, old paper, and the faint, metallic tang of forgotten electricity. John had always been sensitive to atmosphere, to the subtle energies that permeated certain spaces. And the echo chamber, even in its derelict state, hummed with a particular, unsettling resonance. It felt alive, in a way that his sterile Upper East Side apartment did not. It felt like a place where secrets were kept, where truths were whispered into the microphones and then buried in the magnetic tape, waiting for someone to find them. He spent hours in the studio that first night, not recording, but simply exploring. He ran his hands over the dusty console, plucked a few notes on the ancient piano, walked the perimeter of the recording room, listening to the way his footsteps echoed in the vast, empty space. He felt a strange sense of kinship with the forgotten musicians who had once worked here, their dreams and struggles absorbed into the very fabric of the building. He returned the following night, and the night after that, drawn by an inexplicable urge that superseded logic or planning. He brought his own guitar, a battered acoustic that had been his companion through countless late-night writing sessions. He brought a small bag of recording essentials, a few microphones, some fresh reels of tape, a set of headphones. He learned to operate the ancient Studer A80, its mechanical whirring a comforting counterpoint to the blizzard outside. He was alone, completely alone. No Yoko, no bandmates, no producers, no engineers, no hangers-on, no sycophants. Just John Lennon, a derelict studio, and the ghosts of forgotten music. And in that profound solitude, in the freezing, echoing darkness of the echo chamber, something began to stir within him. Something raw, something primal, something that had been buried for too long beneath the layers of fame and expectation and the relentless noise of his own turbulent life. The recording began not with a plan, but with an explosion. John did not sit down and carefully craft a melody or meticulously arrange a chord progression. He simply picked up his guitar, plugged it into the ancient console, and began to play. And what came out was not a song in any conventional sense, but a raw, unadulterated scream. A primal howl of frustration, anger, despair, and a desperate, yearning hope that had been suppressed for too long. He played for hours that first night, the blizzard raging outside, the derelict studio absorbing the raw, unfiltered outpouring of his soul. He sang words that were not lyrics, but fragments of thought, shards of emotion, confessions whispered into the microphone with a brutal honesty that he had rarely allowed himself in his more polished, more public work. He played the piano with a ferocity that threatened to shatter the yellowed keys. He pounded on the drums with a primal rhythm that echoed the frantic beat of his own heart. He recorded everything. Every scream, every whisper, every broken chord, every moment of raw, unadulterated emotion. He was not trying to make a hit record. He was not trying to please an audience. He was not trying to impress critics or satisfy a record label. He was simply trying to survive, to exorcise the demons that had been haunting him, to find a way to express the inexpressible, to scream into the void until the void screamed back. The music he created in those midnight sessions was unlike anything he had ever recorded before. It was stripped bare, raw, almost brutal in its honesty. The production was minimal, almost accidental. The natural reverb of the cavernous room, the hiss of the ancient tape machine, the occasional creak of the floorboards, the distant howl of the blizzard outside. It was a sound that was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating, a sound that felt like it had been torn directly from the deepest, darkest corners of his soul. He recorded an entire album in those clandestine hours, over the course of 3 freezing, snow-swept nights. 10 songs, each one a raw, unadulterated confession, each one a primal scream, each one a desperate, yearning hope. The titles, scrawled on a piece of paper he found in the control room, were as raw and direct as the music itself. Empty Room, Ghost of Me, Screaming into the Snow, The Weight of the World, Broken Mirror, Lost and Found. The silence between, Whispers in the Dark, Frozen Heart, Rebirth. The final song, Rebirth, was different. It was still raw, still primal, but beneath the anger and the despair, a fragile thread of hope began to emerge. A melody, simple and haunting, that spoke of the possibility of beginning again, of finding a way back to the light, even after having walked through the deepest, darkest corners of the soul. It was a song that was simultaneously a confession and a prayer, a scream and a lullaby, a testament to the terrifying power of confronting one's own demons and finding, in the wreckage, the fragile seed of something new. When he finished the final take of Rebirth, the blizzard had finally broken. The first faint light of dawn was beginning to filter through the boarded-up windows of the echo chamber, casting long, spectral shadows across the dusty recording room. John sat in the control room, listening to the playback, his face streaked with tears, his body exhausted, his soul strangely, profoundly at peace. He knew, in that moment, that he had created something extraordinary, something dangerous, something that could not be released to the world, not yet, perhaps never, but something that had changed him irrevocably, something that had broken through the creative block, reignited the fire, and shown him a new path forward. He carefully removed the tape from the Studer A80. He found a metal box in the control room, similar to the one Daniel Marsh would find 50 years later. He placed the tape inside, and on the lid, in his own hand, he wrote 2 words that would seal its fate for decades: "Do not play." John Lennon never spoke of the echo chamber sessions. Not to Yoko, not to his bandmates, not to his producers, not to his closest friends. It was a secret he carried, a private wellspring of creative rebirth that he guarded with the fierce privacy of a man who understood that some truths are too raw, too personal, too dangerous to be shared with the world. He returned to his Upper East Side apartment as the city began to stir, the snow-covered streets gleaming in the pale light of dawn. He showered, shaved, and went about his day as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But something had changed. Those closest to him noticed a subtle shift in his demeanor, a new quality of stillness, a new depth in his eyes, a renewed sense of purpose that had been absent for months. The music he made in the years that followed bore the unmistakable imprint of the echo chamber sessions. The raw, stripped-bare honesty of Walls and Bridges, the primal scream of Mother from Plastic Ono Band. Though recorded earlier, its spirit resonated with this later work. The confessional intimacy of Double Fantasy. All of it carried the echo of those freezing, clandestine hours in the derelict studio. He had found a new voice, a new sound, a new way of expressing the deepest, darkest corners of his soul, and that voice, once found, could not be unfound. The metal box containing the tape of the echo chamber sessions remained hidden in the derelict studio for years. The building itself continued its slow, inexorable decay, its windows broken, its facade crumbling, its interior gradually consumed by dust and mildew and the relentless march of time. It became a forgotten relic of a bygone era, a place that most people avoided, a place where the city's forgotten dreams went to die. In the late 1980s, the building was purchased by a developer with plans to demolish it and build a luxury condominium complex. A team of demolition workers was sent in to clear out the interior, to strip it bare before the wrecking ball arrived. One of those workers, a young man named Tony Moretti, stumbled upon the metal box in the control room, half buried beneath a pile of rubble and discarded equipment. Tony was not a musician. He was a working-class kid from Queens, more interested in a steady paycheck than in forgotten musical history. But something about the box, its weight, its sealed nature, the faded, almost illegible handwriting on its lid, caught his attention. He picked it up, dusted it off, and saw the words, "Do not play. J.L., 1968. He didn't know who J.L. was. He didn't know what the tape contained. But he knew that something that had been hidden for so long, something that bore such a cryptic instruction, was probably worth keeping. He slipped the box into his backpack, took it home, and placed it in his basement, where it remained, forgotten, for another 3 decades. Tony Moretti died in 2019 at the age of 65. His son, a sound engineer named Daniel Marsh, inherited his father's house, and with it, the contents of his father's basement. And in the spring of 2020, in the quiet, pandemic-emptied streets of New York City, Daniel Marsh found the box. The discovery of the tape in 2020 and its subsequent authentication sent shockwaves through the music world. Not immediately, not publicly, but in the quiet, carefully managed circles of music historians, archivists, and the estate of John Lennon. The ethical dilemma was profound. A complete, previously unknown album by one of the most iconic artists of the 20th century, accompanied by an explicit instruction from the artist himself to destroy it. Yoko Ono, who had been informed of the discovery by the estate's legal team, was initially hesitant. She had known John's secrets, had understood the depths of his creative and personal struggles, and had always honored his wishes regarding his unreleased material. But the nature of this particular recording, its raw honesty, its primal scream, its profound testament to a period of intense personal and creative struggle, presented a unique challenge. It was a document of a man confronting his demons, and in doing so, finding a path back to himself. She listened to the tape in a private session, alone in her apartment in the Dakota, the same apartment where John had written his last letter to Paul, the same apartment where he had found his quiet peace before it was stolen from him. She listened to the raw, unfiltered outpouring of his soul, to the screams and the whispers and the broken chords, to the desperate, yearning hope of rebirth. And when the tape ended, she sat in silence for a long time, tears streaming down her face. She understood, in that moment, what the tape represented. Not just a forbidden album, not just a lost recording, but a profound act of self-exorcism, a creative rebirth that had occurred in the deepest, darkest corners of his soul. It was the sound of John Lennon finding his way back to himself, even when he was lost. The decision of what to do with the tape was not made lightly. Yoko consulted with Julian Lennon, with Sean Lennon, with a small circle of trusted advisors and close friends. The conversations were difficult, complex, fraught with the competing considerations of artistic intent, historical significance, and the profound personal implications of releasing such a raw, confessional document to a world that had always preferred its icons to be neatly packaged and easily understood. Ultimately, the decision was made not to release the album in its entirety. Not yet, perhaps never, but a compromise was reached. A single track from the Echo Chamber sessions would be released, the final track, Rebirth, not as a single, not as a commercial product, but as a limited edition, archival release, accompanied by a documentary that would tell the story of its discovery, its context, and the profound personal and creative journey that had led to its creation. The documentary, titled The Echo Chamber, John Lennon's Lost Confession, premiered in December 2023 on the 43rd anniversary of John Lennon's death. It featured interviews with Daniel Marsh, with Professor Eleanor Voss, with Yoko Ono, with Julian Lennon, and with a small circle of musicians and historians who had been granted access to the tape. It told the story of the derelict studio, the blizzard, the midnight sessions, the raw, unfiltered outpouring of John's soul, and the profound creative rebirth that had occurred in the deepest, darkest corners of his being. And at the end of the documentary, for the first time in 55 years, the world heard Rebirth. The release of Rebirth was not a commercial phenomenon. It was not intended to be. It was an archival release, a historical document, a single, raw, unadulterated confession from one of the most iconic artists of the 20th century. But its impact, for those who heard it, was profound. The song itself was a revelation. Stripped bare, raw, almost brutal in its honesty. It was a sound that was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. The production was minimal, almost accidental. The natural reverb of the cavernous room, the hiss of the ancient tape machine, the occasional creak of the floorboards, the distant howl of the blizzard outside. It was a sound that felt like it had been torn directly from the deepest, darkest corners of John Lennon's soul. And the lyrics were what truly resonated. Not abstract, not poetic, but direct, confessional, a raw, unadulterated scream of frustration, anger, despair, and a desperate, yearning hope. It was a song that was simultaneously a confession and a prayer, a scream and a lullaby, a testament to the terrifying power of confronting one's own demons and finding, in the wreckage, the fragile seed of something new. For fans of John Lennon, Rebirth offered a new lens through which to understand his later work. The raw honesty of Walls and Bridges, the primal scream of Mother, the confessional intimacy of Double Fantasy. All of it now carried the unmistakable echo of those freezing, clandestine hours in the echo chamber. It was as if a missing piece of the puzzle had finally been found, a key that unlocked a deeper understanding of the man and his music. For musicians, Rebirth was a testament to the enduring power of raw, unfiltered expression. It was a reminder that the most profound art often emerges not from polished perfection, but from the messy, chaotic, often painful process of confronting one's own demons and screaming into the void until the void screams back. For Julian Lennon, hearing Rebirth was a profound and deeply personal experience. He had always known his father's struggles, had understood the complexities of his creative and personal journey. But Rebirth offered a new level of intimacy, a raw, unfiltered glimpse into the deepest, darkest corners of his father's soul. It was a song that was simultaneously a confession and a prayer, a scream and a lullaby, a testament to the terrifying power of confronting one's own demons and finding, in the wreckage, the fragile seed of something new. He spoke about it in a rare interview, given shortly after the documentary's release. It's a difficult listen, he admitted. It's raw, it's painful, but it's also incredibly honest. And I think that's what he was always striving for, in the end. To be honest, to be true, even when the truth was difficult. Especially when the truth was difficult. He paused. It's the sound of him finding his way back to himself. And I think that's a beautiful thing. New York City, 2024. The derelict studio on the Lower East Side is gone, replaced by a gleaming luxury condominium complex. The blizzard of 1974 is a distant memory, a footnote in the city's long, tumultuous history. The metal box, the tape, the faded handwriting, all of it has been absorbed into the archive, into the carefully managed narrative of John Lennon's legacy. But the echo remains. The echo of a raw, primal scream, captured on a single, forgotten tape, in a freezing, snow-swept midnight, in a derelict studio rumored to be haunted. The echo of a man confronting his demons, screaming into the void until the void screamed back, and finding, in the wreckage, the fragile seed of something new. Rebirth is not a hit song. It is not played on the radio. It is not streamed by millions. It exists in the quiet, carefully managed corners of the archive, a testament to a moment of profound creative rebirth, a raw, unfiltered glimpse into the deepest, darkest corners of John Lennon's soul. And its influence, once heard by a select few, has subtly, irrevocably altered the course of his future music. The raw honesty of Walls and Bridges, the primal scream of Mother, the confessional intimacy of Double Fantasy, all of it now carries the unmistakable echo of those freezing, clandestine hours in the echo chamber. It is as if a missing piece of the puzzle had finally been found, a key that unlocked a deeper understanding of the man and his music. Daniel Marsh continues his work as a sound engineer, his quiet, meticulous dedication to the craft unchanged. He carries the memory of the echo chamber sessions with him, a private understanding of the terrifying power of confronting one's own artistic demons in the dead of night. He knows that some truths are too raw, too personal, too dangerous to be shared with the world. But he also knows that some truths, once found, cannot be unfound. The city breathes. The music plays. And in the silence between what was recorded and what was released, between the song that was made and the song that the world has not yet fully heard, the most important question remains. What if the most profound creative rebirth happens not in the spotlight, not in the polished perfection of a hit record, but in the freezing, echoing darkness of a derelict studio in the dead of night? When a man confronts his own demons and screams into the void until the void screams back, leaving behind a raw, primal echo that changes everything, even if the world never fully hears it?